Welcome back. To shed more light on the issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Dr. Seham Fawzi, lecturer of political science. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Fawzi.
Very good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure, Dr. Fawzi. Doctor, could water become more important strategically in the Middle East region than oil?
Actually, yes, because of, the climate change. It's made it an important topic on the Middle East. Water is distributed unevenly across the region. Rainfall is highly variable. The infrastructure is inadequate. The groundwater is poorly monitored. Demand is increasing because of the population growth, because of the urbanization. Also, the climate change, as I said, is intensifying the problem by increasing drought, floods, and changes in the river flow. Indeed. That's why it became an important, and that's what the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they clearly said that water shortage reduced a lot of problems which reached to be a national security threat or threat to the national security.
Dr. Fawzi, how actually, as you have kindly mentioned, the climate change actually the balance of power between the countries that share the rivers in the Middle East region?
Okay. Actually, when we want to talk about the river disease, here we will talk about the concept, we call it in politics, the hydropolitics, which means that we are here, the water became taken, it has a political, it had a lot of political issues included when we talk about the hydropolitics. Nowadays, the upstream countries, they said that we need also to make development. We need the river water to produce electricity. We need it for the agriculture. We need it for the economic development. At the same time, the downstream countries, they have right on these waters. Some countries, they depend totally on the river water. So they need it to be a lot of questions. It may be raised here if we want to talk about the disagreement between both of the upstream countries or the downstream countries. Okay, yes, it is the right for these countries to have to make a development, but also at the same time you don't need to affect the life of millions of people on the downstream countries.
Doctor, actually, to what extent could the water security contribute to future conflicts in the region?
Okay, it could be one of the reasons that led to the conflict. But is it going to reduce conflict? Is it going to escalate, reach the war? Actually, water couldn't be the only reason because, as all of us know, the cost of war is very high.
Indeed.
Not everyone can pay this cost. So I think in any cuisine, there is the competition, and also at the same time, there is the cooperation. Only when we solve the mistrust, the lack of information from both sides, here we can solve this problem. We will not reach to the war level. But the problem here now, for example, in certain cuisines, there are many questions that lead to the conflict, such as if you want to make dams, how quickly should the reservoir be filled? How should the dam operate during drought? What is information should the upstream country share with the downstream country? What rules should be applied during the prolonged period of low rainfall? These all is points that can be solved. Okay, it won't reach to the war. It just need to have info, to have information that can clarify each position, the upstream country and the downstream country.
Yes. Doctor, of course, the issue of water is an environmental issue from the first level. But can we consider it a matter of security as well in the Middle East region?
And everywhere it is as security, especially if you are suffering from the water poverty. Water poverty, it doesn't mean only that we don't have enough sources of water, but also we may have, for example, we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the, we can use this water in a good way. We don't have the policies. So when it comes to the water, we depend on water in drinking, and we depend on water in agriculture, we depend on water in industry. That's why we consider it as one of the challenges to the national security, especially in the global south countries.
Yeah. Doctor, to what extent the issue, of course, of water scarcity, which is increasing due to the climate change, could be affecting the relations among the different nations sharing water and sharing rivers, and what could be actually the solution for this very important issue?
Okay. First of all, the importance of water is visible on the river, where many countries share the same river. Here, river doesn't respect national borders. Sometimes the decision is taken by the upstream state, which can affect your security, your economic development on the downstream country. Here, the question will be who has the power to influence things. Actually, this is the essence of the relation between the different states. Okay. Again, this is considered hydropolitics, the interaction between water, resources, political power, national interest, diplomacy, and security. What is the solution? First of all, I think we can hear technology can solve this problem. For example, if we talked about desalination, okay, water recycling, using the AI with satellite observation, these could be part of the solution. For example, if we used the technology, here will increase the political trust between the upstream and downstream country. You can reduce the disagreement over the basic facts, because many water disputes, they are very difficult to solve if we have different information about the river, the volume of the river. So we need to build the trust. We can, the technology can help us in confidence building mechanism. Okay, actually, shared water needs shared information. Okay, and this will lead to cooperation.
Doctor, who should have the greater priority when it comes to limited water? Is it cities, farmers, industries, or the whole ecosystems?
Actually, you need to make the balance between all of what you said, because nowadays many research we're talking about how the water scarcity could lead to changes or to geographical changes. For example, it could lead to the migration from the rural areas to the urban migration. Okay, so it could lead to the expansion of the dry lands, changing agriculture geography. All of these areas where the water could change a lot of things. That's why it needs a political decision. The authority could make the balance between all the needs. Who will have water and when and which price?
Doctor, how could the population growth and urbanization affect the Middle East's future water supplies?
Excuse me?
How could the population growth, the increase in the population and the urbanization in the Middle East increase the conflicts for water in the Middle East region?
Okay, let me try to explain that in another word. For example, now the immigration, the immigration will happen from areas which are poor in water to the other areas where there is a more availability of water. This will make stress on the cities, on the services, and on the water. But this could lead to conflict if, again, there wasn't fair distribution of the water.
Yes, of course. Doctor, of course, we have a very important model for the water issue, which is, of course, the dispute between Egypt and Ethiopia. How do you see that as a model for solving the disputes over the water conflicts?
Okay. Actually, there were a lot of historical treaty that was governing the use of the Nile water in Ethiopia and some of the other Byzantine countries. They refused these treaties. They said we weren't part of these treaties, and actually we are growing in population, we are growing on the need. Now, again, that doesn't lead to conflict. It could lead to cooperation. We can use the technology, and this technology can help us in understanding how these points that there is disagreement about, we can solve it through the technology. For example, how quickly should the reservoir be filled? The technology could help you to understand how it could be filled. For example, if what will happen, for example, if an unexpected drought occurs, this also we can use the satellite monitoring. It could tell us the information that we can need. Yes, we have our own legitimate expectation, which should be protected.
Indeed. Dr. Seham Fawzi, lecturer of political science, thank you so much for your very precious input. It was a real pleasure. And that will bring us to the end of this edition from Inside the Middle East.